I'm Howie Rotenstein. Welcome to the Israel Ride.
See, I'll write it because it's like the intro was.
What's really important about the ride, and I think really inspiring, is that it's
Okay,
one
that's
of those
good.
experiences that lets people have a great time.
Can you turn
see
that
Israel
off?
in a
And then
fresh
I want to
way,
hear
rather than
you
being
talk.
here 27 times before or never been here before.
You can turn it off now. It's good. Now, can you talk to me, Bob? Because I like. Noticed.
So, Bob, you don't do anything about that. David's going to manage that, okay? Yeah, and then David will ride it. He already looked to see what he had to do.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, because I had it set. Honey, can you put this back? Do you mind? Yeah. Yeah, you can't hear me, folks. You are correct. I will.
He's going to reach out to her. Hi, Dad.
I mean, yeah, why don't we just 2 minutes? Because I think let's just check here. Okay, yeah.
It's so we don't have the people that bring your...
Hi.
Hello.
Hi.
Excellent. Okay.
Does she see us?
Well, she can see wherever things are pointed, wherever the
If
camera's
you're
pointing.
there, if you're here, if Bob is pointing at you. Here. Karen, do you see me? I don't know if she sees
I
me.
do not.
That's okay. You will.
I just want to say hello.
In a moment. So, can I have the iPad, please? So, Karen, can you, in terms of your video, behind you, although it's going to be starting to get more and more dark, so it won't be as much of a problem.
Right.
But behind you,
You know
there's...
what? All of a sudden, oh, shoot.
what are you going to do?
Okay. Sorry. Would you like me to put on some lights?
Maybe a little more light in front of you would but yeah, it's not bad. No, I think it's fine. I think it's fine.
Yeah, the lighting in this house is very complicated. Let's see.
It's going to be in 10 minutes anyways. Yeah. Karen, I think it's fine. Yeah, that's fine.
Okay.
And if you want to just bring your camera down slightly, if you can.
Is that?
A little up. There you go. So you're in the middle of it. Yeah, that's actually great.
Oh, good. Thank you
Perfect.
for the help.
There's too much what?
On the,
Bring it down just a hair, a little more, just a hair. Just bring the camera down a little bit.
oh,
No, down. Up, right there. Try that.
this way
I think it's fine. Yeah, it's great.
or the
Fan-
other way?
Yep. Okay. So that is going to be good. And looks like we're all set. It's going to be great. So Rabbi will introduce you, and then we'll spotlight you. So actually, give it just a moment, because sometimes we have to change the configuration. When he introduces you, maybe just count to 4 or 5, and then I guess if you can see your... How is it going to work, Andrew? Is she going to be spotlit for that part? Or how will it... Because sometimes people start... Okay.
We'll take care of it.
All right. It'll be good. Thank you, Karen, for coming on so we could check it.
Sure.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Okay. Fantastic. Okay, thank you. So, Bob, if you want to put it back, that's great. Thank you.
I know, Karen, I'm just saying hello.
Hi. How are you?
Good to see you. How are you doing? I'm so sorry we're missing you.
I know, but I'll see you in Boston next week, right?
Yep. You'll see me in Boston.
Good. Well, now I get to see you by Zoom.
Are you enjoying Arizona?
Yes, it's a very nice place to be during the winter.
Exactly. All right. Okay. Look forward to seeing you.
Yeah, thanks, David.
Bob, I'm going to just keep my Slack open in case something comes up. I'm anticipating nothing will, but I might as well I'll keep it open just in case. With you as the beneficiary in the channel.
Yes. Yeah, I'm going to try and pull this blind down. Yeah, the sun is setting, so. Is that better? Great. Thank you.
That seems good. Yeah. So I think we're going to mute you for the moment, Karen, and then
Sure.
we'll make you a co-host. So then you'll be able to unmute yourself. Okay? How do we do that? Oh, I guess, Bob, who's the, Sanctuary is the host. So Bob, if you could make Karen a co-host, that would be great. I guess co-host can't make other people.
So I want to wish all of you a good evening, Erev Tov, Bruchim Habaim, delighted that you're here. This Shabbat morning we concluded Exodus, reading verses from Pekudei, that one would think should provide a dramatic ending to the story that began mired in misery and oppression and slavery. The Mishkan is built, but the verses in Pekudei are filled with details, reviewing again the instructions for building the Mishkan, the tabernacle, the tent of meeting, including all of its pieces and even the clothing, the vestments that Aaron and his sons, the priests, will wear. The lesson, perhaps, that God is in the details. And that, in part, is why we're gathering tonight as Dr. David Lair presents his concluding presentation to all of us with details about what we can do, and I still believe thereby find God. To introduce David to us, we're going to turn to Karen Shapiro by way of Zoom, someone who has devoted herself to the details of environmental protection as a lawyer working for the EPA and then Midwest Environmental Advocates and Milwaukee Riverkeeper and teaching at Marquette and at UWM Center for Water Policy. She's also an avid bicyclist and sits on the board of the Arava Institute. And so, Karen, we're going to come to you by way of Zoom.
Thank you, Rabbi Berkson. Well, I wish I could be all with you in person, but I am delighted to be able to join in by Zoom this evening. And it's with great pleasure that I introduce our speaker, my friend, Dr. David Lair, Director of International Development for the Arava Institute of Environmental Studies, a place that's near and dear to me for all the incredible work it does to address the most challenging environmental issues and threats in the Middle East, and at the same time, build trust and cooperation among the many people of the region, including Israelis, Palestinians, Jordanians, and so on. Dr. Lair is quite an accomplished guy. He holds a doctorate from the Geography and Environmental Development Department of Ben-Gurion University and a joint master's degree in management science from Boston University and Ben-Gurion University. Dr. Lair was the executive director of the Arava Institute for Environmental Studies from 2001 until August 2021, before assuming his current position. Dr. Lair is originally from the United States. He made Aliyah to Israel in 1978 and has been a member of Kibbutz Keturah since 1981. He has worked on the kibbutz in agriculture and education. He's served as the general secretary and business manager, and twice served as an emissary for the Jewish Agency of Israel in the United States. Dr. Lair's academic research includes studies on the effectiveness of the ISO 14001 environmental management system, sustainable development in the Dead Sea Basin, and the cost of nature conservation in Israel. Dr. Lair is currently on sabbatical lecturing at Boston University. So without further ado, I welcome Dr. Lair.
Thank you so much, Karen, for that wonderful introduction. Thank you to the congregation here at Emmanuel. It has been a great honor to spend Shabbat with you. Thank you, David and Deborah, for being such kind hosts, and thank all of you for coming out on a cold winter night. And those of you who are Zooming in and Facebooking in, thank you for joining us. So you heard a little bit about my background, but just to tell you a bit more, I'm here in the room with one of my oldest friends. We've known each other since we were 15 years old, Anita, who's come up from Chicago. And that's because we grew up in a youth movement called Young Judea, which Karen also grew up in. And I was very active in high school in the youth movement sponsored by Hadassah. And when I was 17, I decided to go to Israel for the first time, spent the summer on a kibbutz Arava, which is near Jerusalem. And that was it. I fell in love with Israel. I fell in love with kibbutz. I said, this is what I want to do with my life. And 5 years later, I moved back to Kibbutz Keturah, which is my home, with a group from Young Judea, including the woman who would become my wife, Barbara, who also grew up in Young Judea. And as you heard, Karen spoke about my many different activities on the kibbutz. You know, when you're a member of a kibbutz, you really have a very varied career. So I worked in agriculture and education, business management, was the general secretary. But for the last 20 years, it was my privilege to be the executive director of the Arava Institute for Environmental Studies, because the environment can't wait for peace between Israelis and Palestinians, and because we believe that working on environmental issues, which are common for everybody in the region, we build trust and we build an opportunity for peace in the future. The Arava Institute was founded by two of my friends, Professor Alon Tal, now member of Knesset and also from Young Judea, and Miriam Sharton. Both were members of Kibbutz Keturah at the time. And the Institute was founded in 1996 in order to advance cross-border environmental cooperation in the face of political conflict. So we bring Jews and Arabs together, Israelis, Palestinians, Jordanians, international students, in order to teach that nature knows no borders. We're an academic research program and offer 2 semesters of environmental studies accredited through Ben-Gurion University. I want to stop right now and just show you a short video clip which gives you, I think, a better idea of what the Institute is all about. And on that video clip, you'll see the new director of the Arava Institute, Dr. Tariq Abu Hamed, who is a dear friend, a colleague, and up until this summer was the head of the academic program and the renewable energy research program. He's originally from East Jerusalem, and he's now the new executive director. So whoever's turning on the video, it'll happen. There you go.
Because the environment can't wait for peace between Israelis and Palestinians, the Arava Institute was founded in order to advance cross-border environmental cooperation in the face of political conflict.
The Arava Institute has research centers, cooperation initiatives, and an academic program.
The Arava Institute is unique because it's decided to deal with the transboundary environmental issues in our region.
The goal is to take the theory from the classroom about water, about partnerships, about the shared environment, and to apply these theories on the ground to improve people's lives and to build a different narrative.
Here, the role of the Arava Institute is actually to build a consortium of researchers, of regional leaders, to bring them together and to plan the future action that will help us adapt and mitigate climate change in our region.
When we look at the big picture, it's very hard to find a starting point. The Arava Institute provides a starting point where we can actually work together on tangible projects that change the situation of communities and the environment on the ground, and doing that through fostering trust.
The work that the Arava Institute does in climate change education and education touches upon the food security, the energy security, the water security issues that are important for our region and that are important for the environmental justice of the region that we live in.
Our academic program includes future leaders from Israel, Palestine, Jordan, and around the world to really come together and to work on environmental issues and environmental challenges.
We work also with the communities in Palestine, in Jordan, in Gaza, in the Negev.
I think the Arava Institute demonstrates a way where true collaboration can happen.
Before I came here, I had this idea of what the people on the other side may think, what they may speak about, how they interact, and now I know that what I thought was completely different than what I realized today. I come here, I see something different. I see like the people who is like caring for us, it's like we're sharing everything together, and now we are living together.
Part of our program is bringing people together, not only to learn, but also to live together. We built the program in order to provide space for getting to know one another, for building trust, for having sometimes difficult conversations, with the purpose of really creating long-lasting friendships and connection.
Just widens your heart, you know? It's like just feel love for the environment, and for people, and for culture, and for language.
The Institute's vision is to take all of this and turn it into a global center for applied environmental diplomacy that uses the environment to build peace in the region so we can pass off to our children a world which is more sustainable and more peaceful.
We live together in this region, and we have to work together to solve our region's environmental problems. We don't have a journey to give up.
So the Arava Institute is an academic research program. We offer 2 semesters of academic studies, natural sciences and social sciences. So we offer courses such as ecology, earth studies, renewable energy, sustainable agriculture, but we also offer courses in environmental law, environmental ethics, religion and the environment, environmental economics, environmental education, all the tools that students need to become environmental leaders and professionals for when they go back to their home communities. We have approximately 60 students every semester. The program is accredited by Ben-Gurion University, and we try and reach a balance of 1/3, 1/3, 1/3. 1/3 of our students are Israelis, 1/3 are Palestinians or Jordanians, and 1/3 are international students. So the program is in English. In addition to the academic studies, we have 4 centers of research. Our Center for Renewable Energy is headed by Dr. Tariq Abu Hamed, who established a center in 2008 in order to help to develop one of the region's most abundant resources, the sun. Our Center for Sustainable Agriculture, headed by Dr. Elaine Soloway, who is a member of my kibbutz, Kibbutz Ktura, and has been working on plants and crops that are appropriate for arid lands suffering from desertification, like the Arava Valley, especially perennials. She's most famous for having managed to sprout a date palm from a 2,000-year-old date seed that was found on Masada. That date tree is now growing nicely on Kibbutz Ktura and has a number of cousins, including some female cousins. So 2 summers ago, for the first time in 2,000 years, the Arava Institute harvested the Judean date, the date that you read about in the Bible. You know, when you read about the land of milk and honey in the Bible, the honey that they're talking about is not honey from bees. It's honey that's made from the dates. The Center for Transboundary Water Management, which is headed by Dr. Clive Lipchin, where we work together with our Palestinian and Jordanian colleagues in order to make sure that there's enough water for everyone in the region, that the water is clean and drinkable, and that there's enough water for nature. and our Center for Arid Land Conservation, which is headed by Rena, who you saw on this video. And Rena is a graduate of the Arava Institute, a doctoral student, and her colleague, Dr. Suleiman Halassa, who is also a graduate of the Arava Institute and a graduate of Ben Gurion University, who lives in Aqaba, just across the border. And together they work on building a more sustainable community in our region cross-border. Obviously, having such a diverse group of students is not simple. All living together on Kibbutz Keturah. When we founded the institute in 1996, we thought we could bring a bunch of Jews and Arabs together, throw them in a room, teach them about the environment, because maybe that's something everyone can agree on, and all the rest of that stuff they would talk about on their own. We found out very quickly it doesn't work that way. And if we don't initiate the conversation, then sometimes the conversations just don't happen. People keep smiling at each other and not saying what they really think, or it comes out, but in a not very productive way. And so very early on in our history, we established a program that today we call the Peace Building Leadership Seminar. This is a once-a-week, not-for-credit program where we talk about what they don't want to talk about. We talk about history, politics, religion, war, occupation, terrorism, sort of all the things that bring up the emotions. And of course, this is the Middle East we're talking about, so you know these conversations are not very quiet. They often end with the students screaming and yelling at each other and stomping out the door. But what the students will sometimes come to us and say, wait a minute, I didn't sign up for this stuff. I came here to study the environment. And what we tell them is, look, you really can't learn how to live in peace with nature until you've learned how to live in peace with your neighbor. By the end of the program, the students will tell us, all tell us the same thing, that the Peace Building Leadership Seminar was in fact the most important thing. It taught them the most of all the programs at the Institute. And it's really where these sort of strong bonds are created. It's not always simple, obviously. Bringing people with such a diverse background together, Palestinians, Israelis living together, the Israeli student all of a sudden realizing that their Palestinian roommate comes from a family of Holocaust deniers, or the Palestinian student all of a sudden realizing that their roommate goes every year for a month and is a soldier at a checkpost that he or she passes through on their way to work. So these conversations are not simple, and that's why we give people those tools to deal with it. A couple of years ago, one of our students was called to Army Reserve during his time at the Institute, and he went to serve on the Gaza border. And he, during that time when he was in reserve, there was a terrorist attack at the border, and one of the members of his unit was killed. And he soon was released from his service, and he came back to the Institute, and he debated whether or not he could really come back or not. And finally, he decided he was going to come back, and he came back, and but he was really feeling down, really feeling depressed about everything that happened, and didn't know how to deal with it. And how does he deal with how does he deal with the fact that he's studying with people who are Palestinians, and at the same time he just spent a month in this sort of really horrible situation? And so he, after he got back and put away his stuff, he sort of just walked out to the back of the kibbutz. Which is, those of you who've been to Keturah know, it's in a fairly stark desert area. No, outside of the kibbutz, there's not much there except a lot of rocks. And he, just stopped, and he just sort of started picking up a rock and throwing it. And he picked up another rock and he threw it. After a little while, his roommate, who's a Palestinian, came looking for him because he saw him walk off to the back of the kibbutz, and he saw that he was not doing well. He was depressed. And so he came up on this guy, Roi, who was throwing the rocks, and he stopped him and he said, "You don't know how to throw a rock. Let me show you how to throw a rock." So that's the kind of relationship that people at the Institute have. Another student, an American student, on her first week of the Peace Building Leadership Seminar, was at this meeting where everybody was screaming and yelling at each other, and our water rights and our these rights and the land, and we were here first, and our history and your history. And afterwards, she went back to her room and she was hysterical, crying, and she called her parents and said, I can't, I don't know what to do. These Israelis, these Palestinians, they hate each other. I don't know if we'll last. What she didn't know is that after the Peace Building Leadership Seminar, when she went back to her room crying to her parents, the Israelis and the Palestinians all went to the pub and had a drink together. So this is, people find different ways to deal, but what makes the Arava Institute really unique is the fact that after these sessions where people are screaming and yelling at each other, they all go back to the rooms. They have no other place to go because we live on a kibbutz in the middle of the desert, in the middle of nowhere. So there's no place for them to go except back to the rooms to share tea, to share coffee, to share space. This is how these strong bonds of relationships are built and continue on many years after the experience at the Institute. We have over 1,500 alumni throughout the world. About 2/3 of them live in the Middle East, and they have formed the Arava Alumni Association, which meets once a year at the Institute. We have a conference, and Palestinians and Jordanians come across the border, and Palestinians and Israelis meet and get together. And what's really amazing is that, of course, you would expect that those who who knew each other, who studied together, would see each other and fall into each other's arms. But people who've never met, one person who studied in 2005 and someone else who studied in 2015 meet, and there's an automatic bond because they speak the same language, this language that we teach at the Arava Institute, which is that we teach the language of trust. We teach the language of openness and honesty, and a language which says that we are all in this together. A few years ago, when the Arava Institute was celebrating its 20th anniversary, we asked ourselves not what had we achieved in the last 20 years, but what do we want to achieve in the next 5 to 10 years? And that's when we launched a new program that we call the Track 2 Environmental Forum, in which we take the lessons we teach in the classroom and implement them in the field, in the central Negev, among the Bedouin community in Israel, in the West Bank, in Gaza, in Jordan, where we work together with our Palestinian and Jordanian partners in order to make sure that there's enough water for everybody, make sure there's enough energy for everybody, that there is sustainable agriculture and food security, and that nature is protected. The Arava Institute works in order to continue to build a more sustainable and more peaceful Middle East. I often say that the scarcest resource in the Middle East is not water, it's trust. We don't trust each other. And it's our vision, it's our hope that someday the Minister of the Environment from Israel and the Minister of the Environment from Palestine and the Minister of the Environment from Jordan will all be graduates of the Arava Institute and will be able to work together in order to build a more peaceful and sustainable Middle East. So I want to give people an opportunity to ask questions. And after that, we're going to show a short video about a great project that some of you have participated in and others of you are about to participate in, and I hope all of you will consider joining, which is the Israel Ride, which is an annual event where we take people mostly from the United States, but also from other parts of the world and Israel, and we ride bikes from Jerusalem to Eilat in order to support the Arava Institute and our partner Chazon. So in a minute I'm going to show you that video, but before I do that, I want to open it up to see if there are any questions that people have about the Arava Institute.
And if people would like to ask questions here, we'd ask you to come to one of the two mics so that everyone can see you on Zoom and we'll be able to hear the questions. So yeah.
Bob, if you can show the congregation.
I'm just wondering how you vet the potential students, how you decide how you're accepting them into your program.
So this is an academic program, as I said. Students, we have students from Israel, Palestine, Jordan, and international students. We accept students who have completed their first degree, but we also accept students who haven't yet started studying. The main criteria is English, because the program's in English and it's an academic program, so students have to take an English exam. We interview in person every student, and generally we have a team that goes to Amman to meet with Jordanian students to interview them. We go to the West Bank to meet with students there to interview them. The students that come from Gaza, we interview over Zoom. And, you know, we ask for recommendations. And what we found now more and more, especially among the Middle Eastern students, the Israelis, the Palestinians, and Jordanians, is they're often recommended by previous students or even their brothers and their sisters. But the main criteria is English ability and academic ability. The program itself for international students, it's usually we usually have students from the United States who are coming on their semester abroad program. So the program is accredited by Ben-Gurion University or directly by the universities in the United States. Students come for a semester or 2 semesters, receive credit, and then it counts towards their college degree here in the United States. Palestinian and Jordanian students are generally after their first degree and are interested in, usually are interested in getting, furthering their degree, going on for a master's and maybe a PhD. Some of the first Palestinian and Jordanian students to get their master's degree and their doctorate from Ben-Gurion University were graduates of our program. We were actually recommended them. And then the Israeli students are what we call BFIs. Back from Israel, back from India. They usually are students, people who've traveled around the world. They come back to Israel. They sort of don't know what their next step is, and they decide to spend a semester or a year with us, and then go on to continue their studies. Other questions?
Yeah, I think there's one on Zoom. And Dr. Lux, would you be willing to read your question? If we can show you on Zoom here in a moment. It would be very nice if you could ask your question from Zoom, if you can unmute. Let's see.
There, okay, got it. Thank you for your presentation. Sorry I couldn't hear your other two. I'm interested in, is there governmental influence from the different bodies, from the West Bank and Gaza or Israel or Jordan? You know, do they try to prevent some of your collaboration, or do you seek their positive collaboration? It seems to me like, you know, it's a real snake pit trying to do anything with all the different groups, although it sounds like you've been wonderfully successful.
Well, it definitely is complicated. We have somebody at the Institute who works basically full-time on permits and visas for Palestinian students and for Jordanian students. It's just a long process. In fact, I would say as a comparison, Early on in the Institute's history, we reached out and tried to recruit Egyptian students, and we found that that's almost impossible. We had a few Egyptian students in the very beginning, but basically the Egyptian government, as opposed to the Jordanian government or the Palestinian Authority, prevent their citizens from having any what we call people-to-people contact between Israelis and Egyptians. So we have not had any, since I think 2000, we've not had any Egyptian students at the Arava Institute. As opposed to that, the Jordanian government has always been in favor of enabling Jordanian citizens to interact with Israeli citizens, and we actually have good relations with a number of Jordanian ministries, especially the Ministry of Water and the Ministry of Environmental Protection. Also, the Palestinian Authority basically encourages Palestinians to go to Israel to get higher education. And so in both cases, we certainly haven't run into any roadblocks. The opposite. It's been mostly supportive. The problem is that both Jordanian society and Palestinian society do not necessarily support interaction. There's a large anti-normalization movement both in Jordan and in Palestine. And so even though the government won't put up any barriers, it can be, the social surroundings can put up the barriers. What we found quite often is that the Jordanians who do come to us, for example, that their parents and their close relatives are supportive of coming to Israel, an opportunity to get a better education, to maybe go far, while their wider friendship, the wider circle may be opposed and they may lose friends. But usually what we find is that the families are supportive of the students coming.
Thank you.
Thank you, David. So I was struck in your conversation yesterday morning about some of the specific projects that you've taken on, whether it's taking water out of the atmosphere or I can't even remember what some of the others were. What do you see from a long-term perspective of how you can do some of these things more broadly? I think it's great that you're doing it in the smaller areas, but at some point it needs to get larger and more expansive.
Right. So our approach has really been incremental because there is such a lack of trust in the region, and there's so much suspicion on both sides that it basically anybody in a government position, basically takes the default position of why take a chance? Why permit this to happen? Why support this? Why allow this kind of thing to move forward? It's much safer for me to put a stop to it or not to do anything so that it dies. So what our goal has been for the past 5 years has been to prove that things can happen, that cooperation works, and that it's a good thing, and that it doesn't have negative repercussions. And so we have managed to bring wastewater treatment system to Gaza and to operate a wastewater system in a community that has no wastewater treatment, to bring atmospheric water generators that take water out of the atmosphere, out of the humidity of the atmosphere, and provide much needed drinking water in Gaza. We work on projects similar to that in the West Bank. These are small projects. These are projects that are not solving the problems for millions of people, but what they're doing is giving, first of all, they're a proof of concept, and second of all, most important thing that they do is they give government officials the opportunity to do something positive. We do it in such a way that they're not exposed, but that once it's happened, once that it's working, they can take credit. And what we found is that, literally, the first water gen unit that we got into Gaza, we were all ready to put out a press release about how we'd gotten this unit in. It was so great. And then all of a sudden we see in the newspaper that the general who's in charge of Gaza put out a press release about how successful they were at getting this water gen thing. And so all of a sudden we're creating a different dialogue, a different narrative. And I just read this morning, we've been since we've introduced these systems and shown that it can work, a great deal of our work has had to do with working directly with the Israeli army. And currently the Minister of Defense is Benny Gantz, who also happens to be the head of the Blue and White Party, and our good friend Alon Tal, who's a founder of the Arava Institute, is in that party and a member of the parliament. And we have been working with the Ministry of Defense, providing them with information about what can be done to create a better atmosphere to improve the economic and the infrastructure system in the West Bank and in Gaza. And I just read in the newspaper today that now the Ministry of Defense is now saying that's their line. We need to improve wastewater treatment. We need to improve water access. We need to do all these things to improve the situation. So I think that what's happened is our message is getting across, and I think that fortunately we now have a government that's also willing to listen. So it's coming from both sides.
Thank you. Are there other questions? Oh, another question on Zoom.
Hello, doctor. Can you hear me?
Yes, I hear you.
I'm just curious if we could return to the reach that you may have for American students. Are you focused on any particular type of graduate student programs in the United States in terms of lining up potential students? Are there schools that you're forming close bonds with as sources? I'm just curious as to that reach, because I'd love to see it increase to hit the freshwater sciences, the waste, the whole gamut. Could you comment on your partnership with American universities?
Sure. So we have, in addition to our partnership with Ben Gurion University, which in general is, a well-accepted university for most schools in the United States, we have about 35 direct agreements with universities across the United States. University of Maryland, the California University Systems, Brandeis, Boston University. We have agreements across the United States. Generally, students who come to us are coming to us for their undergraduate, in other words, their junior year abroad. And then we have a second program, which is an internship program, and that offers generally students who have finished their first degree and are thinking about a graduate studies to spend a semester or 2 semesters with us working in one of our research centers in energy, water, agriculture, or conservation, working with our professors. Often they have an opportunity to work in the field to gather data and can use that research as a way to start their master's track. So those are 2 opportunities. One is undergraduate opportunity and the other is a graduate opportunity as an internship program. And we are certainly very open and interested in developing relationships with more universities. So if anybody has any connections, please feel free to contact me. I'm really easy to get to, david@arava.org. Really easy. And one of the ways that we often recruit students in the United States is we do something called the Dialogue Project, where we bring 2 students, 2 former students, 2 alumni, an Israeli and a Palestinian, or an Israeli and a Jordanian, and we take them all around the country. They visit universities, they visit communities, tell about their experiences. They can tell about their experiences much better than I can. Obviously during the pandemic, we have not done that for the past 2 years, but we should be doing that very soon. And in the meanwhile, we've started to do programs on Zoom if anybody's interested. If anybody, especially if there's a university connection, we would be happy to try and develop that.
we will work on that.
Mm-hmm.
Any other questions here or on Zoom? Let's see.
Okay, so I just want to say another word or two. There are a lot of ways in which you can get involved with the Arava Institute. If anything that I've said piques your interest, there's a sign-up sheet outside. But there is one phenomenal way of getting to see the Arava Institute and support the Arava Institute, and that is by joining us on our annual Israel ride, a bike ride where we ride from Jerusalem to Eilat. And there are a number of people, I think, in the room who've done this and who are going to do this. But before we have them say a word or two, we're going to show you a short video clip of that great event.
Welcome to the Israel Ride.
What's really important about the ride, and I think really inspiring, is that it's one of those experiences that lets people have a great time, see Israel in a fresh way, rather than been 27 times before, never been here before.
My first Israel ride, my 12th time in Israel, amazing being able to see and feel Israel in a very different way than any of my other trips.
Hi, I'm Arava. This is my first time on Israel Ride.
And my main first ride, and blast.
They're on my
fifth ride. It's been a lot of fun. I've met a lot of cool people, and it's a very different way of seeing Israel.
A day in the life in the Israel Ride is completely dependent on what sort of rider you are. All of our rides start the day with breakfast, a chance to stretch. We get out early in the morning, we ride and tour whatever your group is offering for that day, and we finish in comfortable, cozy accommodations.
During the course of the week and during the course of the ride, the relationships that are created and the community that's grown there is truly remarkable, and it's people from all over the world.
With the crew and the staff and the other participants, everybody really is holding each other up and making it more than just a ride, but also a community.
It's an amazing experience to just be part of and see this huge group of people who are coming from so many different walks of life, who are all here for the same cause, just traveling en masse. And it could look crazy at times, and it can look amazing at times. And at the end of the day, we all get to where we're going, and everyone's just having a really great time.
This will be the most transformational bike ride you will ever be on, and the only way to see Israel.
The ride supports two great organizations, the Arava Institute for Environmental Studies on Kibbutz Keturah in Israel, and Chazon, the largest Jewish environmental organization in the United States.
We've helped to create one of the scarcest resources in the Middle East, trust. We don't trust each other. And that's what we try and do at the Arava Institute. You really can't live in peace with nature without learning how to live in peace with your neighbor.
The challenge with the environment is that it's an enormous problem. It's an enormous challenge with many, many, many different pieces that need to be worked on. And Chazon has created a world of educational opportunities for people to learn about this in immersive, transformative ways.
The crew, with very few exceptions, are alumni of the Arava Institute. And they come back because of their passion for the work of the Institute, and they know the importance of the ride to funding the work of the Institute, funding scholarships. For the riders who participate, they get to see the crew really as a rolling showcase for a week of a very different perspective.
When you see the unity that they have and the comfort they have with each other and the trust, that shows you the possibility of what this country could be and what this part of the world could be.
The Institute is a family for me.
The friendships I've made in the Institute are just more profound. Like they have roots. They have something that we share together.
The year I spent in Kibbutz Torah and the Arava Institute was the best year of my life, I can tell you for sure.
One of the things that makes me most excited about the ride, beyond the work that it does in support of the work of the Arava Institute and Hazon, is the transformational experience it is for a rider. So we make the trip from Jerusalem to Eilat. We ride for 3 days at the beginning, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. We spend Shabbat together in Mitzpeh Ramon. And it's amazing to me as a leader on the ride to watch the transformation from Tuesday night, when the group is first getting together in Jerusalem. We get to Mitzpeh Ramon 3 days later, and as the group sits down for Shabbat dinner, you can see that we've made a transition from a group of individuals to a real community.
This ride just puts it all together. The people are great, the food is great, and the whole atmosphere is terrific.
It's a totally feel-good situation.
Anybody around the world, this is an amazing experience, and it's for you.
I can't say enough about this, except you need to do this ride.
When we reach Eilat and there's that incredible moment of joy and celebration when they reach the Red Sea and you realize this is worth every moment that we've been working through the year. And it's an incredible thing to be a part of.
Okay, I think we can come back. Very good. So we really want to thank all of you for being here. I'm so thankful that Deborah and I participated in the 2017 Israel Ride, where we were able to experience firsthand all of these wonderful things that David Lair has shared with us over the weekend. We were smitten with what the Arava Institute stands for and what it's all about. That we brought a team of 13 riders 2 years later in 2019 from Wisconsin on the 2019 Israel Ride. And this year, we're fortunate that we're bringing 18 riders. And some of you are out here. Karen Shapiro again will be one of the riders. And we're so thankful and really didn't know anything about this before, too much about this before 2017, and we're just very passionate about this organization. We're fortunate that you, David, have taught us and inspired us over the weekend, and we know that this is the beginning of a strong relationship between the Arava Institute and Milwaukee. Thank you to Karen Shapiro for introducing David Lair today, and to Rabbi Berkson for your words of welcome. A heartfelt thank you to our sponsors this weekend, to Ruth Treisman and the Women of Emmanuel, to Kai Gardner, Uriah Roth and Rabbi Hanuk Wallach of the Jewish Community Relations Council, the Israel Center, and the Milwaukee Jewish Federation for their financial assistance and also their help in publicizing these events. I'm so appreciative of Sharon and Mike Grinker for your support of this weekend, Sharon, for all of your assistance in publicizing and bringing people to these events, and to Mike for your leadership of our congregation, and also thanks to our board. Thank you to Rob Golub for your informative article in the Jewish Chronicle, and to Susan Bentz for your engaging interview on WUWM's Lake Effect, which you can still hear. You can go to their website and hear the interview that aired last Thursday. Thank you to my colleagues, Rabbi Berkson, Executive Director Andrew Appel, and our Director of Lifelong Learning, Susan Cosden, for your encouragement, and to our support staff for fielding your questions and calls about the weekend, and for the wonderful setup of each of these programs. Many thanks also to Andrew Appel and Bob Brasner for their technological wizardry in making all of these events hybrid and accessible, both in person and online, and to Bob for keeping our webpage up to date and user-friendly. And a humble appreciation to my remarkable wife, Deborah, for being an amazing soul, a wonderful sounding board as we put this weekend together, and a gracious host to David Lair. And finally, thanks to all of you for joining in and making this such a memorable weekend. If you would like more information about the Arava Institute, please fill out your name and email on the list in the Cardo. And if you're online, you'll see in the chat, you can please visit arava.org. That's ARAVA.org. And now it's time to go out and make a difference in the world with these insights that we've just learned. And we'll end with a closing song here. Let's see if this works. Okay, let's see. Okay. There's much work to be done in the world. Lo alecha, amlacha ligmor, velo ata ben chorin, leipater mimena. Lo alecha, amlacha ligmor, velo ata ben chorin, leipater mimena. Hayom katzar, v'hamlacha merubah. The day is short and there's much work to be done. Hayom katzar, v'hamlacha merubah. The day is short and there's much work to be done. We can make a difference, we can turn the world around. When we make a difference, it goes round and round and round. Got to make a difference while you're still around. Lo alecha. Amlacha ligmor velo ata ben chorin leipater mimena. Lo alecha, amlacha ligmor velo ata ben chorin leipater mimena. Hayom katzar, v'hamlacha merubah. The day is short and there's much work to be done. Hayom katzar, v'hamlacha merubah. And there's much work to be done. We can. So, it's a song that was created for our congregation at our 150th anniversary, and the message is always imperative and important. There's much work to be done, so let's go out and do the work. Thank you for coming this evening, and we'll socialize with you a little bit here, and thank you for tuning in online as well. Bye-bye. That's a beautiful. Craig Taubman made that song up for our congregation for 150. We do, and so I'm going to work on that connection. Actually, Karen said it's something.